Welcome. We are glad you have joined us for another What's Next Longevity Deal Talk, our first of the new year. This edition is made possible by the AgeTech Collaborative from AARP, an unparalleled innovation ecosystem bringing together cutting-edge thinkers in the longevity tech space. Our title, AgeTech Takes Center Stage at CES. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Mary Furlong. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Fred. We're really starting the new year off with great guests today, and so excited to see you have this session.
Absolutely. AgeTech really did take center stage at CES with the AARP and the AgeTech Collaborative making it happen. We have a deal involving AARP and the AgeTech Collaborative to kick things off, and it shows just how effective the AARP is in this space. Rendever, the company pioneering the future of aging through VR, has acquired Alcove, a popular consumer VR platform that was co-developed by AARP and Rendever. Joining us is Rendever's CEO and co-founder Kyle Rand. Hi, Kyle.
Hey, Fred. How are you? It's great to be here.
Kyle, thank you for being with us. Tell us more about Rendever Alcove and how the deal came about.
Yeah, so we are lucky enough to be able to say that we've been working with AARP for just about 6 years now. So really since the early days of AARP Innovation Labs coming and taking shape. And as you said, they really have paved the way for a lot of excitement, a lot of movement in this industry. It's been awesome to see. We originally, when we started Rendever, right, as a company, our focus is on overcoming social isolation amongst the aging population. And our focus has always been on senior living communities. That's where we have our most spread, working with hundreds of communities all over North America, because we realized that there was a huge opportunity to start to create that impact and start to build social connections through VR in those settings. Now, since we've been building this company, we have probably on a daily basis gotten requests for consumers who wanted to use our platform, wanted to use our technology. But as any startup founder, investor, anybody who has experience building something will tell you, you have to stay focused. And so we knew if we were going to go consumer, we would want to do it with a partner. And luckily, all things worked out where we got to start working with AARP and start co-creating, co-developing Alcove back in right towards the end of 2018 for a 2019 CES launch. Fast forward a few years and we have this big announcement, and it's been nothing but an amazing journey.
Kyle, I remember visiting you in the lab, and I'm just so impressed by your progress. And you did start with the best, right? With the AARP AgeTech Collaborative.
Yeah. What's awesome about the progress, if you go back to 2019 versus what we just did in 2023, AARP's booth has grown by like, 10 times? The technology, the hardware that we were using in 2019 isn't even created anymore. Like it's the hardware space has just grown up in so many big ways. So I think a lot of tailwinds have really put us in a great situation.
Maybe it would be good to describe a little bit more for people of what Alcove does, what you do, and what this is going to mean for the future of Alcove and your mission.
So as I said, Rendever has always focused on overcoming social isolation amongst aging individuals. And our core driving principle is that the foundation of human connection is positive shared experiences. And what can happen as you age is you might lose access to really getting those positive shared experiences. We look at VR as the best way to enable people to live their lives outside of the walls that they're physically living in. So people through VR can go and they can explore new cities, they can check off bucket list items, and they can go back to meaningful places from their past, but they can do it with others. So in senior living communities, they bring groups of residents together and residents have these journeys together. But when we look at the consumer market and those who are aging in place, they also need to be building connection, right? If you're aging in place, probably the biggest thing you're missing from senior living is that sense of community. And so what Alcove does is anybody at home who has their own VR headset, their own Oculus Quest, Meta Quest, whatever you want to call it, they can download Alcove on the App Store for free. And their family member can download Alcove on the App Store for free. And what Alcove does is it takes a little bit of the magic that we've been building over the past 7 years and brings it to a super accessible space where family members can come together into this beautiful virtual home environment, sit down on the couch together, have conversations, or go and explore the world.
And with us from AARP is Innovation Labs Senior Vice President Andy Miller. Hi, Andy.
Hey, Fred. Hey, Mary.
Andy, I'm so excited to have you on our podcast today. You've made such a difference at AARP. Tell us your thoughts about the deal and the crucial role the AgeTech Collaborative is playing in bringing technologies to older adults.
Yeah, so the deal itself was something I guess I always sort of thought would happen. When Kyle and I met way back 6 years ago, I had this idea for VR. In Rendever, Tom and Kyle basically made it come to life for us. And so we spent, 4 years or so with this product, and we did everything we could to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. At the end of the day, AARP is not a tech company, right? So it becomes, the assessment was done, like, where would Alcove be best suited? And clearly it's with Rendever. It's based on the Rendever platform. They know it inside and out. And so that was really the idea. We started talking about this about a year ago, I think, Kyle, right? I was trying to remember the timeline. About a year ago, we started having this conversation about, would this make sense for Rendever to own it? At the time, Kyle was also thinking about going direct to consumer, and it just seemed to make sense, right? So we're super excited to remain part of the Rendever family. I mean, Alcove's going over, and AARP is going to maintain an equity position in the company. So we're not, by any means done helping Rendever continue to grow. And that's really what the AgeTech Collaborative is all about. It's how do we find these great dynamic startups? I know we have Jim here today. He can talk about, he's in the midst of it right now. But we have these great startups we find. We try and help them. I mean, the accelerator program is really focused on how do we validate, refine, and get folks ready to scale. And then the collaborative, when we built it, was really about how do we create the largest ecosystem in the world for anyone that wants to participate in the age tech space. And fortunately, we've been able to do that in about a year's time. There were about over 200 companies now inside the collaborative. I would expect after CES that number will grow pretty quickly here. And we anticipate working with upwards of 75 to 100 startups next year. So we're going to continue to grow and fuel the startup side, which will then help us with the investors and the enterprise side.
Kyle and Andy, your thoughts about the comfort and willingness of older adults to use VR platforms like Rendever and Alcove?
Well, look, it's a question we got a lot, especially in the early days. What I can tell you is we have 6-7 years of data that shows that older adults are very ready to adopt VR. One of the best things that we built out as a company is this very, very robust analytics solution that allows us to really understand how each of our users are using the platform. And some of my favorite stats from that, probably my number one favorite stat, is that collectively, users have spent over 3 million minutes using VR, like going and exploring the world with their friends, with their loved ones. And that's really accelerated. I think almost a third of that has been in the past 12 months. So it's picking up steam. And as we bring these platforms together, I think it's only going to keep growing.
I totally agree. I think what's interesting from a consumer side, I can't remember the actual data points, but there's hundreds of thousands of people that have downloaded Alcove and use it. And so when you pair that up with what Kyle's doing on the B2B side, and he shared with me, and Kyle, I don't know if you want to talk about a little bit of some of the new things you're launching, but what's fascinating is Kyle's creating this model which is going to blur the lines between B2B and B2C. So, right, you have the distribution channel is one thing, but he's making all end users the same, right? So I don't, Kyle, you want to give any glimpse into, some of the stuff you share with me around live or fit?
Yeah, so what we've been building over the past 6 years has really been an ecosystem that tackles this idea of social isolation. As I said earlier, senior living is best positioned to help build communities, right? That's the bread and butter of the big opportunity there. If you're aging in place, your biggest risk is that you end up being isolated. And data shows that has ties to a 50% increase in dementia, 30% increase in mortality rates. I think everybody knows this stuff now. And so what we're doing is we're using this ecosystem, the fact that we now have a product for consumers that are aging in place, we have a product for residents of senior living communities, and we're mixing the network. So you can have a resident of a community here in Boston interacting with an 80-year-old who's also living at home in Boston. And what we've seen is when you can deliver these really amazing experiences through VR, people light up, they get excited, they start building these connections organically. Like we have data that shows this. And so by merging these two worlds together, I think we're really starting to build a future in which it doesn't matter where you're getting older, you're going to have high quality social structure. And all data says that that's really what matters.
And I'm going to give you an example that Kyle shared with me that I get excited about. So everyone knows bingo night, right? So imagine now if you can have Friday night bingo night, you have people from any sort of facility or assisted living logging in, you have people using it independently, maybe their grandkids are logging in with them, and you're literally sitting there having Friday night, you're in a bingo hall, you're doing virtual bingo live. And to me, that's awesome. I just can't think of a better way to do that. So again, we're really excited to continue to work with Rendever and help in any way we can, albeit from a slightly different seat at the table. But we're thrilled that we were able to do this transaction.
And when I first told Andy about bingo and having that live in Alcove, the first thing he said was celebrity bingo night. And ever since then, I can't get over the idea of Ted Danson hosting celebrity bingo in Alcove. I'm like really into it. So Ted,
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. You know, I've been doing this a long time, and I don't know, Kyle, if you know, I started CNET way back, and the tools are very rudimentary before AOL. But mitigating the social isolation of older people, and nothing beats bingo. Lots of people have tried to beat bingo, but if you could do that at home and you have great prizes, you'll win. So Andy, I want to just say I saw the sign that showed all the names in the AgeTech Collaborative, and I would just send a note to Rick Robinson. Congratulations. Your team has done such a great job in pulling people together. And I talked to NIA, they're proud of being in the ecosystem. We're proud of being in the ecosystem. And you've talked a little bit about how did you pull this off, and what was your vision, and what were the pieces that were part of pulling it together and creating such, I think it's a strategic inflection point for AgeTech.
Yeah. So it may look like we did this in a very short period of time, but the reality is we didn't. I had this idea going back probably 4 years, and it stems from the fact that we have no shortage of startups that come to us, and we have a 2% acceptance rate of all the companies we see that we bring into the accelerator program. And the challenge is we do a lot of great things with them, but we can't sell into our membership. So, whether it's Kyle, whether it's Jim here, we work with them. We want to help them scale their business, and we just can't do that. And so we started dabbling a few years back with test beds. And we said, well, we went and got the Howard Hospital in DC and the School of Medicine, and they were willing to do some clinical trials with some folks. We got Army Distaff, which is a CCRC in DC. They were running pilots with a lot of companies, and we started to see this willingness and desire to test all this new tech. So we started looking at what's out there for people. And then selfishly, I'm thinking about all of our startups going, well, we can create an opportunity for them to have a path to pilot or a path to scale. Then the second piece of that was, I personally do a decent amount of angel investing. And in Boston, there's a new angel network called TBD that's grown to be fairly large. And I was seeing through TBD all the same deals that I was already investing in through AARP. And they would call me and say, well, I have a conflict, I can't invest. And they go, I get that, but we want you to come and tell us why AARP cares. And so very quickly, I started to realize there's a need for someone to convene all of these people together. And I was doing, at the same time, probably 3 calls a month with big companies that couldn't quite get innovation right, whether that was doing it in-house and trying to build their own startups or trying to find startups. And so all these things just led me to, over the last 4 years, start to formulate this. We were behind the scenes testing this in drips and drabs. And then we said, well, let's go out with this. We spent 6 months building the platform, and then we launched it in November of 2022. I hate the beginning of the year. I get all blurred here. And we were supposed to launch it at CES last year. And so we came out of the gates. We didn't end up going to CES, but I think we had about 57 companies within a month that had signed up. And then the team, as you mentioned, Rick and his team, it's a really small team. So that's the other thing that's worth noting here. We have one person doing business development. We've been able to grow this thing to over 200 companies. So it's a testament for the value, the power of the community play here. And so we're going to continue to use what I call, AARP's superpower. It's our ability to convene. So we're going to continue to use our megaphone, continue to get as many companies and investors to the table and start breaking down a lot of these silos. And hopefully it will continue. And an interesting fact, one of the names you didn't see on that wall, Mary, was the Department of Transportation is one of our newest members of the collaborative. So when you think about, you tend to go to the big companies that you would expect, and you tend to think about the investors you would expect. We're getting a lot of folks that you wouldn't expect to join the collaborative as well. So the interest in AgeTech is really there, and I think the headlines around AgeTech takes center stage are spot on.
Right.
Well, I mean, the spotlight. Go ahead, Mary.
Oh, I was going to say 3, 2, 1. That really has grown globally. I think that you're seeing deal flow, and I concur with you the amount of investor interest in the market as they have a personal interest. So you're building community among the corporate stakeholders. You're making it easier for the innovation centers like Thrive to get involved and to find the right deals. And then you're getting kind of top deals that can go into AARP as well with a return on the investment. Who wouldn't like that, right?
Yeah, I think we've formally had 76 companies go through our program, startups. There's actually more than that, because in the early days, like when we met with Kyle, we were just talking the other day, Kyle, about, Kyle was our first cohort, if you want to call it a cohort. There was 3 companies. 2 of the 3 companies are still with us. One, I just reached out to her today and said, hey, I hadn't thought about you in a while, but why aren't you part of the collaborative? So out of the 76 companies, we've invested in 51 of them. And, we have this luxury of having the bird's eye view. So we know what's happening in the industry. We know what's happening with the consumer segment. And we find the best companies and we work with them. And over the course of the 8 weeks that we work with them in our cohort, and then as they continue on, I have the luxury of sitting in where I can pick and choose, and we've only had, out of the 51 companies we've invested in, there's only, in over 3.5 years, there's only been 1 company go out of business. And so that's a pretty good track record. And if you look at the IRR, it's really top percentile. So it's a testament to the funnel, to our ability to pick the right ones and then convene so that these companies have the ability to grow, continue validating what they're doing, and move forward.
And at CES, wow, what a lineup you had. And I want to read a quote here. Alan McIntosh, founding partner at AgeTech Capital, he had a post on LinkedIn that says, AgeTech Collaborative really raised the bar. Congratulations to Andy Miller, Rick Robinson, Scott Frisch, Joanne Jenkins for showcasing inspiring startups, convening creative meetings and conversations with industry, investors, and funding agencies, and then bringing the challenges and opportunities to center stage. Notably, Seth Rogen using humor to tackle Alzheimer's, Steve Case highlighting older entrepreneurs as a key ingredient in the rise of the rest, Ken Jeong animating a closely contested AgeTech After Dark pitch challenge. We've got the winner with us in just a minute. And Michael Milken confirming the scale and growth of the market, the intrinsic wisdom of older generations, and the tech industry's role in helping unleash that wonderful potential. Some quote, Andy.
Yeah, it was great. It was funny. So about a year ago, we went to see CTA, and I had this idea. For a while now, I've had this idea. I've been talking to Joanne about, we need to run our own conference. And I said, well, let's go to CTA and pitch them. Let's see if we can do a conference in the conference. And when we pitched them, we had to put together an outline of exactly the sessions. And, we didn't know who we were going to be able to get at the time. And so we just sort of put some filler names in there that we knew we could get, right? I'm not trying to demean them, but some lesser known folks. And CTA said, sure, we'd love to do this. And so we got really excited, and then we did what AARP does really well, and that's get, dial up the celebrity network here to see who can we get come talk. And I can tell you that I am so happy the way that it turned out, because up until about a month before, it was still some unknown things, some moving parts, wasn't quite sure. The one session that Alan didn't mention is we had Grant Hill and Jessica Mendoza come as well. And we wanted to have a little bit of fun. So we knew Michael would be a little serious. We knew Steve would be serious. Seth and his wife Lauren would add a little bit of comedy, but it's in a very serious way. And so it turned out to be much better than we could expect. Those that were at the pitch event, we weren't really sure what was going to happen, quite frankly. We got Ken Jeong, and we love to have Ken because he's an actual medical doctor, right? Before he was a comedic actor, he's a practicing physician. And so what I said to Ken in our prep call is, I said, I want you to do exactly what you do on The Masked Singer, like the way you're animated and all that, but add the lens of the medical doctor. And in the prep call, he said, okay, are there any boundaries? And we were like, well, we want you to be funny. We want you to be edgy. And so right before the show, I was backstage with Joanne and Scott Frisch and Ken. And he says, I'm going to push a little bit. Are you okay with that, Joanne? And Joanne's like, sure, it's all in good fun. And I kept trying to see Joanne's face through the show. And certain points in the show when he made some comments, I was like, oh, we didn't quite know what he was going to say. But I will tell you that she said, and this was in our leadership team meeting on Tuesday, her social media post from the Ken Jeong pitch event was the single most viewed, most reacted to social media post she's ever had, by far, like more than any advocacy, more than any policy. And so she was joking about it, but at the same time, a lot of what we're doing is we're trying to get people to think about what we're doing in particular in a very different way. It's not the stodgy AARP that's up on the hill, pounding the pavement, yes, we still do all that, and that's great, but we're much more than that. And so I think it showed really well. It played really well. I will say that we've already made plans for next year for CES. We are going to do another pitch event. We picked a different venue that will hold 600 people, that will actually be completely contained. I know it was tough on stage. Kim, I know when you were up on stage, it was probably, the noise, you couldn't tell the noise, and it was coming from outside the venue, it was coming from the concourse, but distracting. So we've learned a lot from that event. We will continue to have some high profile folks join us, try and make it entertaining and fun like we do a lot of our pitch events. And I can tell you that from a CES perspective, I can give you a little bit of a glimpse. Our booth, Kyle, was 7,000 square feet this year, so it was more than 10 times what it was in 19. Next year, we're going to be closer to 13,000 square feet, and it's going to be multiple booths. So there'll be an AARP booth of startups, but we're also working with CTA to create right across the aisle, if you will, the AgeTech Pavilion, which will have an even larger stage, which will have even more hopefully immersive opportunities to engage with tech. And collectively, it should be around 14,000 square feet.
Well, congratulations, Andy. Just amazing. And we have some companies that you really put the spotlight on joining us. We've been hinting about it. First, Kinoo, Kinoo, co-founder Jim Marggraff. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Fred. Good to see you. Andy as well. Mary, great to be here today.
So Jim, tell us a little bit about Kinoo and the importance of being part of the AgeTech Collaborative to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the importance, so Kinoo, our mission is to create the best possible future for children, their families, and the world. And having listened to Kyle speak about social isolation, as we know, that this is a huge challenge for older adults. So while I'm speaking to families, so Kyle spoke about connecting older adults anywhere with anyone. We're focused on connecting older adults with younger loved ones in their families. That's our starting point. And the challenge you have there is, while grandparents love and think highly and dearly and want to be relevant and purposeful in the lives of their grandchildren, particularly when they're remote, they can't always do that. It's very difficult. And the problem is something we call the Johnny problem. This kind of goes back to when Johnny can't read, or many years ago when the U.S. discovered we had a literacy problem, which still exists. But the issue now is, if grandma gets on a call Zoom FaceTime call with Johnny, and Johnny's 4. The conversation goes something like this. Hey, Johnny, how are you? Good. What are you up to? Nothing. And Johnny runs off because Johnny hasn't yet developed the social skills, and grandma doesn't really know what to ask Johnny. So it becomes very, very thin. So one solution to that, to support this, is you could put games in a video chat, and that's been done. But it doesn't really work well because the video then becomes gratuitous. Kids focus on the game, and what the grandparent sees is this instead of engagement. So the first thing we did is we said we need to find a way to connect the older adult with the younger adult with purpose and to support bonding and collaboration. So we created a bespoke set of games, new forms of play in video chat, real-time exchanging, that are not like typical checkers and tic-tac-toe. And that was the starting point. So they'll fly to the moon together, or they'll bake cookies together and work on pouring the batter and the ingredients and mixing them, or fish together. That's the first step. Second thing was we said we need a character in this video chat to make it easy for the grandparent and also to engage the child. So we put a 2D character, a couple characters in that are delightful and fun, big eyes, large heads, classic children's characters, cartoon characters that support this. The next thing was to know when and what to say to each party in the dialogue. So for instance, you've got a grandmother, and when they may be baking together, but grandma's focused on the baking and moving the ingredients and the child's mixing in. But at a certain moment in time, we'll put a prompt up for the grandma to say, gee, Johnny, would you like to hear about my cookies when I was a little girl? Or when I was a little girl, I loved to make this cookie. My grandma made it. So we'll give ideas on exact things to say or discussion topics, and they'll be relevant to ecology and the environment, to world peace. So we take some high concepts and translate them into language that can be accessible to young kids. And the last piece was we said we also want the child to have the ability to have some agency and to have movement. Kids, young kids, they may spend time in front of a screen, but they like movement. So we created a tool that a child could hold in their hand in the form of a wand that now becomes part of the play. So this wand becomes an augmented reality tool in the screen while they're playing together and will turn into a cup to pour batter, or a whisk to whisk batter, or a fishing rod to be able to cast a line, or a chisel to be able to chip away at a sculpture as the grandma or grandpa helps them do so. So that's what we're up to, and it was just delightful to be at this amazing event with. I'll be able to speak some of the outcomes, but at AARP and all 7,000 feet with the other 22 companies.
Jim, I've had the chance to play with Kinoo with my youngest granddaughter. It really does help to bring the generations together with lots of fun and engagement. But there's some real science and research behind what you're doing here, and that kind of goes back to a little bit of your background and maybe some of the original intent in the work you've been doing.
Thank you. Thank you, Fred. Yeah. I mean, my background originally, I was in telecommunications, but I had young children, 2 and 4, watching them learn to read, and invented something called the LeapPad, and then sold my company to Leapfrog. So we helped roughly 100 million kids in about 5 years, and I've carried that forward through other companies. Most recent company this is my 7th that I've done. The 6th was in AR and VR. We did wearable eye tracking technology that we could put into AR and VR headsets and sold that to Google. So I've been looking at how humans communicate with one another, how we learn, how we think, how we grow. And a big part of this for older adults and younger adults is growth. It's interesting that the older family members, their priority in their relationship with young children is this: connect, play, and learn. First, they want connection. Secondly, they want fun, which has to be there for them to stay connected. And third, they want to see that that grandchild is learning. Now, the parent, on the other hand, has a flipped interest. Their interest is learn, then play, then connect. And so we've made this observation. And so our starting point has been to support the video chat, enhance with a character, with the prompts, with the bespoke games and characters and the wand. And what we're doing now is we're making it easier for the parent to start. So the entry point that we're now doing is to take the wand, and they've said this to us. They want to see that child is learning first. Then they want them to play with them, and then they want to connect them to the grandparent. So what we're doing now is we're launching a new approach, which is taking our wand And if the parent wants to see the child learn, there's one thing: if a parent sees a child doing something, they will say, my child is learning. And what if a parent sees a child playing with a book, a physical paper book, there's no doubt in the parent's mind that that child is learning. It's a given. So we said, hey, what if we could make this wand act like a Nintendo Wii for books? So interactive motion, responsive, light, sound, color, slammed together with a leap pad. So what we're doing is we'll launch later this year a version of this wand that will read aloud to a child with dialogic, which is questions and answers, as well as interaction, physical and otherwise. So the child will take the wand, they'll swirl it, they'll paint at different times, they'll cast lines, they'll chip away, but they'll be physically moving with paper books. And so we've announced, and we showed this at our booth. If you remember this brand, Highlights for Kids. So Highlights they're nearly 1 million subscribers. It's a substantial company. But
you're taking me back to the dentist's office, Jim.
That's it. That's what people say. I remember it, and you may remember things like silly pictures where you'll see really goofy things on a page, and stories that are just delightful stories. And this one is, "Are we there? You're driving." Classic thing kids will say to their parents, or looking for this one will hit you. Looking for hidden pictures on a page. So you remember all these activities. We bring this to life with our wand. So the wand will read aloud. It'll support ultimately phonological awareness, phonemic development, and also tying this now to the family and the remote loved one. So now we can start as an entry point where the wand comes into the household, out of the box, just works with a book. Parent sees it, loves it. And now they can play as well with a remote loved one and realize, wow, I have this, and for free. I can just have grandma download an app. We can play together. I can use my wand in that manner. And we'll be bringing more reading into this relationship as well, because grandparents really adore reading with children, not just reading to children, which is very important. So that's where we're going. So we are a learning literacy company. So again, play, learn, connect, learn, and play. And that's where we're taking it. And by the way, thank you, because at AARP, it was great to reconnect. Andy, you were there with Mike Milken, who just, I've had good relationship with in the past. Steve Case as well. I was able to talk to Steve, you brought by, and wouldn't have seen these people. All of our schedules are busy. We had distributors, partners, publishers, press, all were there and interested in what we're doing. So it was a just remarkable venue. Thank you.
Well, I guess we would like to hear just a little bit more, Jim, about the importance of being part of the collaborative and what that means to, you've got such a terrific background in innovation and inventing. Being part of the collaborative is I guess, sort of a different experience for you.
It sure was. Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. It was great being there, to be on the floor for 4 days, just in a small startup environment with other companies. And but I sat with Kevin, who is the CEO of Paperwork, and we talked, and we had immediate connection. So he made introductions and vice versa. Really enjoyed speaking to Victor at Care Coach and looking at what he's doing with AI because he's gone from having people that were coaches remotely through an avatar now to bringing that into AI. And we were able to exchange, because we're doing the same, our wand, with being able to recognize book covers. Ultimately, you'll be able to pull a book off a bookshelf. If you download content for it, you'll be able to use that wand with an existing book. Cat in the Hat, Very Hungry Caterpillar, other books, and it will read those books aloud. So we spoke. It was great because there's some good technology. Andy, you got great companies with strong technologists. So we were able to exchange thoughts on advanced technology. Right now with ChatGPT, we have generative AI and generative conversational AI. So we exchanged thoughts on this and the way we'll be deploying that ultimately as well in our wand and solution and enhancing conversations. We have a relationship that's budding with MIT and the Space Exploration Initiative for connecting astronauts with loved ones on Earth. And that's where this whole company started. So we'll be part of MIT Space Week in March. So lots of different connections that all tie back, because I think it's about the interchange and the intersection of ideas and of good people and businesses and business models. And I think the AgeTech Collaborative all looking at how we support older and aging adults creates a kind of a wonderful, immediate, real-time learning lab for discussion and exchanging ideas. So it was great to have time with the other founders of other companies there.
Andy, you can pick them.
Yeah, I will say that this is, I mean, you've heard two of our companies here. I mean, we joke around with Rendever being, the original. You are the OG. You're right, way back in the day. But it's interesting because one of the things we talk to our startups about is you can get anything you want out of our program. And it's very different. And we use the word accelerator for the startup program. I actually dislike that word. I've challenged the team to come up with a better word because we have so many founders that have gone through Mass Challenge, Techstars, Y Combinator, or like Jim, who have had numerous successful exits. And you would think, why would they want to come to us? Why does Jim need an accelerator program? Right? He could write the book on what we do. Well, the reason we're so valuable to these folks is because we offer them, each company, a customized sort of plan. So what do you need to get out of this? And that's what we're going to do. And we're going to roll our sleeves up and sort of help you, right? It's a little bit of staff aug, a little bit of like that's wrangling project management, wrangling resources, whether they're ours or someone else's. And that's what I love about my job, and is that we get to find these great companies, and it doesn't matter the level of experience of the founding team, we can give them what they need, right? And then we see this, and we have folks that show up and it's their first startup and they're younger and they don't know what they're doing, and we can help them find their way. Or folks like Kyle and Jim that know exactly what they need, and we just help them find what they need. So it's been a great experience. We're going to continue. And what's nice about the collaborative is before we launch this, we'd have these cohorts. And so that within the cohort, you'd have some of what Jim's talking about. But we didn't have a really good mechanism to go cross cohort. And so now we have this sort of alumni network, if you will, that's inside the collaborative. We're actually, I don't know if we've announced this yet, we're actually going to do a 2-day conference in Washington, D.C., the AgeTech Collaborative Conference in September. And a lot of that will be reconnecting all of the alumni founders will have their own sort of special thing, and all of our big companies will come together. The investors will come together. And so we're going to continue to try and cultivate these relationships. I call them the not so serendipitous introductions, where we're behind the scenes curating because we're hearing what everybody wants. And it should be my team's obligation to say, okay, great. Jim, you need to meet Mike Milken again. I know you know him, but we can make Mike bump into you, right? Like whatever the case may be, that's what we're going to try and do. And Kim, hopefully I'm selling you hard on why you should be part of our next program.
I'm in.
Thank you. But a really quick note, by the way, one other thing that just popped up yesterday as a result of being there at AARP, at the AgeTech Collaborative, was I just received this email from a casting producer of Shark Tank.
Wow.
He said, hey, I saw you at CES and want to reach out to see if you'd be interested in applying for season 15.
There you go. That's great.
That's, just again, thank you. It's these unexpecteds.
Talk about impact. Mary?
Oh, Andy, I was going to say, we've been working with you all for about 20 years, and I see the power of the AgeTech Collaborative online, where people can reach out to each other. Yeah. So I love that you have the online and the in real life, and then these specialty events. And also you leverage the research within AARP. So when an entrepreneur comes in, and they're looking at a particular category, you have top of the line research in that specific area.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, and I've had a lot of big companies come to me, and I'm part of something called World 50, which is in my group's Innovating 50. It's 55 of the top innovators from around the world, and it's giant companies. And we have these meetings, and they ask me the same question: and how are you doing this? And how come we've not been successful when you have? And it's really, really simple. We're a social mission organization that happens to have an abundance of resources, and so the goal is not profitability. The goal is not serving my Wall Street shareholders. So it actually gives me so much more latitude to create meaningful social impact versus just chasing bottom line, which is what happens in these big companies, right? It's the innovator's dilemma. And if you don't have a return on the investment, they kill it. and they don't actually give it time to breathe and grow. And so, I've been trying to get these big companies to say, you know what, come join the collaborative. That's the way you can participate. And we don't charge to be part of the collaborative. We do have an agreement. We do make you sign up for certain things, but there's no monetary exchange. And the reason being is this isn't about money for us. This is literally about finding the best companies that we can. So, Kinoo, the Rendevers, how do we find them, help them, and then get them in front of the big companies that can actually help make a difference, or get them in front of the investors that they need to have the money to grow the business. Because at the end of the day, we think the goal here is we think we can create meaningful societal impact by just being the convener and sort of bringing our resources to bear.
You are. I mean, listen to these stories, connections around social isolation. And one of the biggest areas is transportation for older people.
That leads us to, I think, to our next guest, because and finding the best companies, as Andy just said, and one way you do that is by holding pitch competitions. And you had that After Dark competition. You talked about it, the comedian Ken Jeong hosting it. The winner of the competition was a company called Onward. And we have CEO Kim Petty with us. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Fred. Thanks for having me today. I have to reinforce what I was hearing before. It was total serendipity that I met AARP, and the pitch premise was bringing joy to life after 50. And I have to say, I've had so much fun with all of the people at AARP. They're living it. So thanks for having me today.
So congratulations, Kim. I know that transportation is a huge issue. You've got all of these older adults who are turning 76 to 86, and transportation is going to be one of the biggest challenges. So let's tell everybody how and why you came up on top.
Yeah. So, at Onward, we're solving for transportation as a social determinant of health. There are 5.8 million people each year who miss or delay care due to lack of access to safe, reliable transportation. And our caregivers in the United States cite transportation as their number one caregiving responsibility. So Onward has created a unique type of rideshare for older adults. It's a door-through-door transportation service that has companion drivers with it. What that means is our companion drivers will go into the home, help somebody put on their shoes, their coat, carry their belongings, walk them out to the vehicle, fold a walker, a wheelchair. And then when they arrive at the healthcare facility, walk them into the healthcare facility and provide a direct handoff to the healthcare team. When they're returning, they can stop for medications, et cetera, before being tucked in at home. And one of the unique features that we have built into the technology is this ability to have rider-driver favorites. So our riders can choose their favorite companion drivers, which means they see them on a routine and regular basis. So, for example, many of our riders are going to dialysis appointments. That's 6 times a week. They end up building a deep sense of trust and relationship with their drivers. And as a result, we hear things from our riders like, I'm only going to my dialysis appointment today because of my driver, Jessica. It's coming back to that social isolation and loneliness that Kyle talked about earlier.
Tell us how this came about, Kim.
Yeah, so I started my career in financial services, really quickly found it was not something that really compelled me, and, maneuvered my way into healthcare in my early career. But I actually ended up at the Cleveland Clinic and then started a research collaborative on human experience in healthcare, and ended up also running a patient engagement technology company. And what I kept seeing was, a lot of where we were failing people was in this space of social determinants of health. And the reason why people's journey in healthcare was so unsuccessful is because we weren't really understanding those underlying causes of illness and what they really needed to be successful. So 2 years ago, I met my co-founder, who runs the largest ambulance company in the Bay Area, and started unpacking really, what does transportation look like in healthcare? How can we solve for this particular barrier? Watched as our healthcare systems were really overutilizing ambulance services. That ambulance company sees, 30% of the people getting in the back of those ambulances never needed to be there. So we dove into this, and then also the platform has been expanded to enable everything from traditional rideshare services up through ambulance services. And what this lets us do is have one stop shopping for our healthcare partners to get all levels of transportation. And then it puts that companion ride on the menu so that they have that easy and accessible in the same place that they're getting all other transportation resources.
Well, that's really important. So right now, Medicare Advantage programs are reimbursing for SDOH, and so are state governments. But it really, when people say, oh, I'll just put Uber or Lyft on my mom's phone, that's not going to work when it means going to see a doctor, and especially if the patient has mobility issues, which so many have. So it's really clear to me why you won. Congratulations.
Yeah, we've been able to form some great partnerships with, the VA health system in San Francisco and UCSF Health. And that's exactly right. It's, if you're going for dialysis, you need a whole different level of support. Or we work with the LGBTQ adult day services in San Francisco and Alameda Health System. And it's, your post-procedure going for dialysis treatment, getting out to a curb or getting into a vehicle just doesn't work. And, we even saw at Alameda Health System, they were sending their doctors and nurses down to wait on the curb for the ride share, which we have a national healthcare workforce shortage. This is the definition of insanity. So how do we make sure that we're using our resources most effectively? Even if you look at the fact that we're today sending a lot of mid-level practitioners into the home to deliver care, why aren't we instead pulling patients out of the home into the healthcare system so that we're using those discrete resources more effectively?
And diabetes is one of the biggest market opportunities globally. So this trip to dialysis can be very exhausting for patients. So it makes all the difference to have a friend with you.
And winning the competition may open the doors to you working, hopefully, with a collaborative going forward.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm been going back and forth with some of the team members in the collaborative, and I'm hopeful that we can get involved. Because, to the earlier points, if you look at the list of organizations that Andy and the team have managed to line up to be involved, it's a pretty impressive list of connections. And, we don't learn very well in isolation as humans. We do much better when we're surrounded by a bunch of other intelligent people and connections and people who can influence us in the right direction.
So, Andy, a few more words about 2023. Do you want to share any more of the vision of you and the team?
Sure. So we're excited to get back to in-person events because, like you mentioned, Mary, so much of what we do are these pitch events around the country. We also do a lot of conferences where we bring our startups, or we're starting to showcase the AgeTech Collaborative as a thought leader and trying to get people to buy into it. And so we're going to up the game a little bit this year. So we are title sponsors at Vive. We're going to be title sponsors at Health. We're looking at some other things in the financial services space, but we will continue to do our pitch events all over the country. We started doing these open mic nights, which is basically what we did in Vegas. What's been really interesting about the open mic nights is we've been finding much better companies than when we do these themed events. So we're going to continue to sort of amp up and do more of those. And then I mentioned we're going to do our own conference in September. And we'll gear up for CES next year, which will be even bigger. I do expect that we'll probably double the size of the collaborative between now and next CES, right? So the goal is going to be, pushing the team pretty hard. And can we get 500, folks in the different companies in the collaborative? So I think it's doable, and that's what our focus is going to be on. And we also are going to run 4 cohorts next year, and we've added to the team. So we're going to be running somewhere between 12 and 16 companies per cohort. So it's a lot more than we've done in the past. And so we want to make sure that we don't lose the quality, but we can increase throughput, because the challenge that I'll have is the bigger that the AgeTech Collaborative becomes on the investor and the company side, I need to have more startups for them. So we're doing that. And we just announced recently a deal with Techstars. Techstars Longevity, and they'll be able to send some of their companies our way. They don't automatically get in, but they can apply to be part of the collaborative, and we will go through and invite those that we think are having good material impact to join our movement. And we're also going to be doing the same deal with Mass Challenge, and so look for that to come early in 23 here. And our goal is to have, 100 plus startups join next year. And then that's going to continue to help fuel the momentum and get more and more bigger companies and investors and folks like Alan McIntosh, right? I mean, I happen to know Alan. I've known him for a long time. He was an investor in my last company. He started 2 different venture funds that have been wildly successful. And now he's going to go and, he's trying to create the world's largest age tech focused venture fund. And so I have no doubt that he'll do it, and the team that he's assembled around him. And so when that starts to happen, you'll start to see more and more people, even if they're not really sure what age tech is, they see Alan's name or other folks like that historically don't come from the age tech category getting involved. And I think you're going to have more and more folks sort of looking over going, wait, I need to be part of this.
This was an amazing session. We are privileged to work with you, and both on our podcast and our conferences. And, our winner from last year just got funded by the Mayo Clinic. So there was a lot of buzz at JP Morgan Healthcare this week about the AgeTech Collaborative. So it's kind of interesting to see, I think, the growth, and it's great to have the leadership and for you to have the resources to pull that off.
Joanne's been the biggest champion of all of this. So that helps, right? When your boss is the CEO and is willing to take the chance and let you sort of have the latitude to go and pursue this vision.
Right. I think that longevity and age tech today are where the internet was 25 years ago. And this has provided the continuum that connects everyone together. And it's getting applause from everyone like NIA saying, I'm so glad AARP is doing this. So, and they've got their own list of amazing entrepreneurs.
They do.
So, and those entrepreneurs, have been vetted by researchers and others. So it's great to see. And what a great session, Fred.
Absolutely. They are making it happen. Thank you, Kim, Jim, Andy, and Kyle. Mary, really a great way to bring What's Next Longevity Deal Talk into 2023.
Yes, and as you all do deals, think of us and come back and announce them with us. And this is our 2nd year of the podcast, and we hope everyone will tell their friends and colleagues about it, and you'll have great deals to share. It's impressive to see the orchestra of talent coming around this space.
You can find all the episodes along with What's Next Living Longer, Better, Smarter at maryfurlong.com/podcasts. Thank you for tuning in.